What's up, Bengals fans? It's Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Happy to have you with us. It feels, for me personally, like an eternity since I have taken the air, have spoken about the Bengals and all of that. The last time I took the air, unfortunately, we were talking about the Joe Burrow injury, and that obviously is continuing into this week. We've got more to talk about this week, some different stuff to talk about. Want to give a little tip of the cap to Matt Minnick and John Sheeran for carrying a lot of the weight this week. Had to kind of take care of some things on the personal side of things. And they, with the pregame show by Narragansett Beer and the midweek show that they handled in my absence, appreciate those guys and appreciate all of you for tuning in, not only today, but through those other shows that I mentioned as well. Again, Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider. Happy to be with you all, despite the Bengals falling to the New York Giants 19-17 at Paul Brown Stadium. There are a couple of different ways you can look at this game. I think everybody could agree, based on what was happening for both teams at quarterback, it was an ugly game. And the fact that neither team cracked 20 points, pretty ugly game. Pretty ugly game to watch. Not a lot of offense, not a lot of points, and excuse me, not too much excitement in terms of firepower, explosive plays, that sort of thing. A real grinder of a game. I think in some points of view, a lot of Bengals fans could sit here and look at this game and say, hey, this was actually a little bit better than I thought it was going to be without Joe Burrow in the lineup. 2-point loss. The Giants aren't a good team, but 2-point loss without your star quarterback, without your star running back, injuries all over the field. Turmoil supposedly in the locker room per reports. You kind of thought that the wheels were going to be falling off this thing, and this may have been a real ugly one, especially with Brandon Allen under center. So you may actually feel kind of good about the fact that, hey, maybe these guys didn't pack it in. Maybe these guys are backing Zach Taylor, at least the guys that are still there and playing on the field and getting playing time. Maybe there's some disgruntled guys on the sideline that aren't getting the playing time they think they deserve. But, if you heard the telecast today on Fox, Chris Spielman, a guy who played linebacker at a very high level in the NFL for a ton of years, kind of made note that this doesn't look like a team that is packing it up, so to speak. And, not packing it up for Zach Taylor and not calling it quits on the season with their franchise quarterback injured. And I guess you got to kind of like some of that. On the other hand, familiar mistakes, silly turnovers, penalties at bad moments, not enough points, and yet another one possession loss for Zach Taylor and company. It's pretty inexplicable at this point as to how this team cannot pull out these one-score wins. Pretty inexplicable, and the way that they continue to lose these games, all of a sudden, it was 19-10. It looked like the Giants had the game wrapped up with a couple of minutes left. They got a first down. Well, all of a sudden, holding penalty, it's getting called back. Bengals hold strong, get a great punt return for once from Alex Erickson. He made a number of bonehead plays as a punt returner, but he gave the team a great punt return to set them up for a game-winning field goal, a game-winning touchdown, and first play from scrimmage, sack, fumble, game over. So, look, there are a lot of, believe it or not, there are some positives to take away from today, and many of which in individual performances, and we'll get to that in just a second. And the fact that we kind of thought this was going to be a disaster in terms of a score, and the Bengals may have had the potential to get blown out of their own building, that didn't happen. And they fought pretty hard throughout the entire game, especially with a depleted roster. But you still see what Joe Burrow managed to cover up in terms of roster deficiencies when he was playing. You saw what his abilities were able to hide and make the team look a little bit better maybe than it was. And the sad thing too, folks, if you look at last week and you look at today, granted, even with Joe Burrow healthy, we don't know if this was a playoff team. It definitely would have been competitive and maybe start rolling off some wins at the end of the season here. But, I mean, this last week, definitely you feel like you would have won that game if Joe Burrow was healthy. This week, for sure, you thought you would have won that one if you have a healthy Joe Burrow. Just two very winnable games. All of a sudden, you'd be looking at, a 4-6-1 record instead of a 2-8-1 record. And, you're feeling quite a bit different about your football team at that point. So, it's just unfortunate the ripple effect that injury has had on this entire roster. And you see everything that Joe Burrow masked in the, when he was under center. If you look, there are a couple of things. One outstanding facet of the game today was special teams. Randy Bullock played pretty well. You had the outstanding and record-setting, the longest play in Bengals history, Brandon Wilson, 103-yard kickoff return touchdown. Congratulations to him. That was a very exciting play. He had another great return late in the game. I mentioned Alex Erickson had some issues early on, letting balls go and get bad field position. But at the end there, he made a big punt return play to put the team in position to win. So special teams was outstanding today. And really, that's what I liked about today, because you knew that the Cincinnati Bengals would need to have some of these special teams plays. You need to have a defensive turnover, a pick six or something to help cope with the loss of Joe Burrow if you were going to try and win this game. And they did that. They got the special teams touchdown. They had a number of different returns, a lot of big plays on special teams, and you have to like that. The linebackers, and we'll pull up the tail of the tape here in just a second, but in an appropriate weekend to use the tail of the tape term, right? With the big fights last night. Anyway, if you look at we'll look at the tail of the tape, but the linebackers today were incredibly active for the Cincinnati Bengals. Incredibly active. Josh Bynes, this is probably the best game I've seen Josh Bynes play in a Bengals uniform. Logan Wilson had a couple of nice plays today. Akeem Davis-Gaither laid out and almost had a nice interception. Jermaine Pratt was very active today and making a lot of nice tackles. So a great day from the Bengals linebackers today. And by the way, if you're watching us live, I apologize for the sun here. It's shifting quite rapidly. I'm in a different time zone than many of you. It's middle of the day for me here, folks. So I've got the sun shining on me here. I'm trying to avoid it. I apologize if I look a little shadowy. But look, I mean, great game by the defense, really. I mean, 19 points. When you give up 19 points with that side of the ball being pretty depleted, you're missing some important players there, and you don't have your quarterback, so you know that the offense isn't going to be scoring a lot of points. You give up 19 points. That's not a bad day at the office. It's not a bad day at the office. Unfortunately, a lack of a pass rush and a lack of getting turnovers continues to plague this team. They did have the one fumble recovery, just the second of the entire season, a fumble recovery by Von Bell. So that, there are definitely some issues, but you have to say that special teams and defense gave this team a chance to win, a golden opportunity to win today, and they did not capitalize. They did not capitalize because of the deficiencies on offense. Rough day at the office for Jonah Williams. He had a couple of let up sacks at the end there. They had Drew Sample on Jabal Sheard initially. He got by Sample, Sheard got by Sample, and then he got by Williams to force that final sack fumble at the end there. There was also a sack earlier in the game that Jonah let up, and rough day at the office for him. And, up and down across the line in terms of overall performance, just kind of an up and down day. And that's kind of unfortunately what we've become accustomed to. Quentin Spain was at left guard, was playing pretty well, and then had to move over to right guard, had a holding penalty later in the game. He took over for Alex Redmond. Alex Redmond left the game with a concussion, and the rest is kind of history there. We'll get to the numbers in just a second and the stats, and we can go over some of that. I want to let people know, in case they missed Zach Taylor's press conference that immediately followed the 19-17 loss by the Bengals at the hands of the New York Football Giants. He said, when asked about Brandon Allen, two big tidbits here, that he did, quote, enough in terms of playing and his abilities and what he did and what he showed on Sunday. He did, quote, enough. And Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com followed up with a question saying, essentially, is Brandon Allen going to start next week? And Zach Taylor said yes. So we're going to expect to see more of Brandon Allen, and this team is obviously especially now with Joe Burrow out of the lineup and the team being 2-8-1, they're going to be in roster evaluation mode at this point. They're going to see if Brandon Allen has what it takes and does enough to prove to them that he is the backup quarterback of the future and not Ryan Finley. You can make an argument that today was a lot more palatable to watch in terms of quarterback play by Brandon Allen instead of Ryan Finley. What we saw from this in the second half from Ryan Finley last week against Washington was atrocious, but Washington, better pass defense and a really bad situation that Finley just got thrown in. I mean, both your emotions got to be all over the place and, just not a good situation for him. So it's not all on number 5 there, but he looked pretty poor in his half of play last week. They went with Brandon Allen today. I mean, it was better, I guess. There were still some forced throws. I will say this about Brandon Allen. He threw the touchdown late. Nice read and play there to T. Higgins. There were a couple of plays that Brandon Allen had, a couple of nice throws that really could have made a difference in the team possibly coming out with a win here. Second half, the first 2 drives, the Bengals have the ball. There's Gio Bernard out in the flat, drops a 3rd and 1. That would have been an easy first down. A catch that Gio Bernard, team captain, makes in his sleep. Inexplicably drops it. A little bit later in the second half, Brandon Allen, seeing immense pressure up front, throws a really nice ball to Tyler Boyd. Boyd kind of lets it get in on him and gets hit immediately, and the ball kind of gets jarred loose. It's a play you kind of think Tyler Boyd, I don't know, tough catch, but you've seen him make way more difficult catches. You kind of think maybe that was one that you'd like to have back there, and that killed the drive. As I mentioned, a couple of penalties later in the game too that killed momentum, and that was kind of the story of things. A lot of similar situations. If you've got some questions or something, I'll try and take some of these in these live chats. Whether you're joining us on Cincy Jungle's Facebook page, whether you're joining us on the Orange and Black Insider YouTube channel, or if you happen to now be joining us on Twitter, we're streaming there too. So if you've got a couple questions, maybe I'll try and answer a couple of those as we go through some of the stats here. But I see here, this was, David Fussner says, AJ Green, nothing again, looked like he was sleepwalking. I don't know. I mean, it's really difficult to explain what's going on with AJ Green. I think there's a little bit of a tentative nature with, potentially not wanting to accumulate another injury. There are, some other facets there at play. Obviously, Joe Burrow being out and, they're not being AJ Green not being able to practice a lot with Joe Burrow when he was available, in the summer because of the COVID stuff, because of preseason, because, AJ had an injury, just not a lot of cohesion being built between those two. And now, you're just seeing a very lackluster year from AJ Green. And in our pregame show by Narragansett Beer, not this week, but the week prior against Washington, we noted that AJ Green's career may be headed a little bit towards the way that Larry Fitzgerald's is. Larry Fitzgerald's kind of had to become a different wide receiver instead of being that go-to alpha dog guy. He's kind of playing second fiddle there in Arizona and still putting up a pretty consistent and nice career for himself. It's just that's kind of where his career has taken him. He's moved more inside as a slot guy, and we may see that from AJ Green, whether that's with the Cincinnati Bengals next year or not, I don't know. But, and I don't know what teams would be willing to pay him next year based on some of the stats and things we've seen on tape. Jurgen Tossman here. Why no John Ross again? That's a mystery to us all, Jurgen. And I hope I'm saying your name right there. That's a mystery to us all. And I think now with Joe Burrow being out, I mentioned this earlier, you kind of feel like this would have been roster evaluation mode time again for the Bengals. Why not put John Ross out there and see what you got? Punt returns, kick returns, these jet sweeps they keep running to Tyler Boyd and Alex Erickson. That seems to be right up the alley of John Ross. Either his head is not into football, he is not practicing well, and they're not throwing him under the bus publicly about that. He's in the coach's doghouse. I will say this, John Ross was in Marvin Lewis's doghouse. Now he appears to be in Zach Taylor's doghouse. So I always try and defend the player. But when two different coaching regimes still can't find a way to use this guy, still don't suit him up when he's healthy, I do think, by the way, I do think John Ross does have a foot injury that he sustained a couple of weeks ago while they trying to do that corner wide receiver experiment that they tried to do. So he's probably still dealing with that. But, I just feel like as the year goes on, if he does prove to be healthy, you got to get him out there and at least see if you can get something with him, especially if you're going to keep this coaching staff, you're going to keep this system, you're going to need to see if John Ross fits in it. And you're going to need to see if he's somebody that you're going to keep around. Because look, nobody's really talking about this. I've said it a couple times, though. The wide receiver group for the Bengals next year is going to potentially be depleted in terms of free agency attrition. You've got John Ross, impending free agent. You've got AJ Green, impending free agent. You've got Alex Erickson, impending free agent. You got Mike Thomas, impending free agent. You've got Auden Tate, a free agent after 21. And then you've got Tyler Boyd for a couple of years there. So, and then you've got T. Higgins as well for a couple of years. But I mean, there's 4 guys there that are set. And even, I hate to say this about AJ Green, but all those names are replaceable. But you're going to, with other needs that you have on this roster, wide receiver all of a sudden becomes a pretty big priority. So you need to figure out if you're going to keep AJ Green or John Ross or both. And they got to get playing time. They got to get looks from quarterbacks. They got to do that. Let's keep going here. We'll do the tail of the tape, and I'll show you some stats here in case you have not seen some of these. We like to run through these and show you that. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com with some awesome weird lighting today. If you're joining us via video, whether that's on Cincy Jungle's Facebook or YouTube, it's the sun's doing some weird stuff in my house here. I apologize. I'm looking very shadowy and mysterious, but anyway, we'll be here a couple more minutes. You can get all of our stuff on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Megaphone, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcast streaming. We're basically there. The Cincy Jungle channel, myself and John Sheeran do the Orange and Black Insider, Matt Minnick in his Chalk Talk episodes. And you can also get Ace Boogie and Zim Hude, who do the Orange is the New Black podcast as well. All of that is available for your listening pleasure. Basically, between all of us, you have stuff every day of the week. New stuff every day of the week, whether it's video, whether it's audio, both. You got stuff every day of the week. So check it out. Let's go to the tail of the tape, shall we? We're going to pull up. This is the score rundown on NFL.com. Here, these are the Giants side of the stats. If you look here on the right side of the screen that I am sharing, Daniel Jones, 16 of 27, 213, left the game in the second half with a hamstring injury. And I hate to say this, but, the Giants, I don't know how severe it was. He had his helmet and pads on still on the sideline. He didn't go to the locker room, and he didn't get out of his football gear. So my assumption is that if they needed him in emergency, he would have still been able to play. But I also think maybe the Giants felt that they maybe were in a little bit of control of this game and they didn't need to rush him back. Who knows? But you got Colt McCoy coming in, old Colt McCoy, 6 of 10 for 31 yards. Didn't do very much. A lot of stuff in the flat for Colt McCoy. They fed Wayne Gallman, who is getting a lot of touches because of Saquon Barkley's season-ending injury. 24 carries, 94 yards, a touchdown, 3.9 yards per carry. Workmanlike, I guess. Effective, but not overly exciting. Just grinding. Dion Lewis woulda, coulda, shoulda had a huge game, especially in the receiving department. A lot of easy missed throws to Dion Lewis that would have potentially gone for a touchdown, first downs, that sort of thing. You can see just the 2 carries on 10 yards. We'll go to his receiving numbers in just a second. You can see that. Alfred Morris. Forgot that guy was on that team and still playing football. 4 carries, 8 yards there. So you can see they tried to run the ball quite a bit. Ran the ball quite a bit. Evan Ingram. What a day from Evan Ingram. 2 fantastic catches on long balls, 6 catches for 129 yards, and the Bengals still cannot figure out a way to cover a tight end. One of those receptions was against Von Bell, and Von Bell ended up having a pretty good game, but again, you keep putting Von Bell in these deep passing coverage situations, and that is just not his strength as a football player. He is good near the line of scrimmage. He is good in short and intermediate passing areas where he doesn't have to move a ton and where he can kind of seek out the tackle, diagnose the play, and make a play in a short area of space. When it's a long area of space, he struggles, and that's been the case this year. And for some reason, they keep putting Von Bell in situations, in deep passing situations or man coverage in kind of longer pass attempts, and that is just not his strength. It's just not his strength, and they need to figure out what's going on there. Sterling Shepard, pretty effective day, 7 catches, 64 yards on 8 targets. Golden Tate was just harassed by Mackenzie Alexander today. He got the best of him once, but 4 catches, 36 yards on 9 targets. Mackenzie Alexander was playing really great football today, I thought. Look here, though. You see Dion Lewis, 1 reception for 7 yards on 3 targets. Those 2 misses that you had there, those were 2 big misses to Dion Lewis. He was open for quite a bit of space on those there. You go down here, you had the Evan Ingram fumble that was lost. So Von Bell picked that one up, and that led to a Bengals field goal there. Jabal Sheard, a forced fumble. Logan Ryan, a forced fumble, and then there were 2. Those were both recovered there as well. So the Logan Ryan one was an interesting one against Drew Sample, wherein Drew Sample caught the ball and kind of stood a little still because someone was grabbing his face mask. That didn't get called, and there were a couple of other defensive pass interference penalties that I thought could have been called on the Giants at certain points in the game. They were not. Logan Ryan jarred the ball loose, and rest is history there. You got the interception by Nico Lelos. And a lot of passes defense. If you look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 passes defended by Giants defenders today, and a lot of them were in very tight spaces where Brandon Allen was trying to fit in passes that weren't really available. They were just not available. So they were swarming. And then a lot of you see here, you got the 1 sack by Sheard, the 1 sack by Leonard Williams there. So not a terrible day in terms of the Bengals offensive line giving up sacks to the opposition, but still not a great one either. Those ended up costing them. Here's Brandon Allen's day, 17 of 29, 136, a touchdown and an interception. So nothing real exciting there. Manageable passes. Tried to give him high completion passes, and I think the Giants defense was pretty well prepared for what Brandon Allen was maybe going to show him. Not much on the ground. 8 carries, 32 yards for Gio Bernard. Sean Williams had the 7-yard punt return, fake punt run for a first down. That was pretty exciting. I forgot to mention that, and all of the good special teams areas there. So a good play there that kept the Bengals in the game. And then, of course, 4 carries, 7 yards. Bengals just aren't running the ball. And if you look, I mean, gosh, guys, the disparity of offensive plays here is it's pretty astounding. Pretty astounding. The Bengals they only had 3 drives in the first half. So they just did not have the ball very often, a few 3 and outs. So they didn't have the ball very much, and they weren't moving the ball very much. T. Higgins, 5 catches, 44 yards in the touchdown, caught all 5 thrown to him. Drew Sample 4 for 40 on 5 targets, and he did have that fumble. Gio Bernard, 2 catches, 17 yards on 3 targets. Tyler Boyd, rough day for him, 3 catches, 15 yards on 6 targets. Yikes. Travion Williams getting the mix a little bit, 13-yard reception, and just kind of a lot of dink and dunk stuff the rest of the way. You look here, they're the fumbles. Bell forced and recovered the one off of Ingram. Look at the – I tweeted this out. Look at the days from Josh Bynes and Mackenzie Alexander. Combined 5 passes defended from those 2. and another from Davis Gaither. I mentioned the great day from the Bengals linebackers. Bell, 10 total tackles, including 1 for a loss. Jesse Bates, 7 tackles. Josh Bynes, 7 tackles, 1 for loss, plus those 2 passes defended. Jermaine Pratt, 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss for Jermaine Pratt. LaShawn Sims continues to struggle. I am really looking forward to the return of Trey Waynes, whenever that may be, or Darius Phillips. LaShawn Sims, unfortunately, just continues to struggle in that. It's not helping the Bengals pass defense. Sam Hubbard, 7 total tackles, including 1 for loss. Still having trouble getting to the passer, does Hubbard, and really anyone else not named Carl Lawson. Mackenzie Alexander, just the 2 tackles, but he was very active. I think, what did we say, 3 passes defended up here, plus the 2 tackles. Really, really active day from Mackenzie Alexander. He was doing a lot of good stuff. Brandon Wilson, MVP of the day, between playing some defense, having that kickoff return, also made a nice tackle on the opening kickoff too. So guy was doing a little bit of everything. It was awesome. Mike Daniels was so close to having an interception. Amani Bledsoe tipped one up, and Mike Daniels kind of had one that he could have laid out for, but he didn't see it until it was too late. Marcus Hunt, not an overly effective day, or not a big day on the stat sheet, but hey, for what the Bengals signed him for, and him being kind of a scrap heap guy and an emergency guy, he's given him a little bit. A lot more than I thought he would. He's in on a lot of plays. He had a pass deflection last week. I've been pleased for the most part from what I've seen from him. Sometimes because he's playing inside, and he's got that immense height, he can get out of position every once in a while, getting kind of turned a little bit because he doesn't have, that lower, squattier body. But he's in there, and I'm seeing a little bit of a difference when he's in there. So I personally have been kind of pleased from what he's given him, at least as an emergency rotational guy. Again, you can't expect the world from that guy, given his age and where he's at in his career and everything, and what the Bengals are using him for. But take what you can get, and he's given him a little bit. So gotta like that. And the rest, just kind of a good day from Logan Wilson. 3 tackles, a tackle for loss. That was nice. So you like that there too. And then you see the 1 of 1, 2 extra points from Randy Bullock. Good day from Kevin Huber as well. 5 punts, 3 of them inside the 20. And, Brandon Wilson, 46 yards per 3 kickoff returns. Alex Erickson, that 29-yarder, but, the rest of the punts there were a little bit yikes. I don't know if they'll have the team stats up. They do not, unfortunately. So we can't go over some of that other stuff. But that is where we're at with things right now. And Cincinnati Bengals are 2-8-1 right now, and unfortunately at the bottom looking up. And that's where we're at right now. And I'm seeing some not so complimentary things from certain people on LaShawn Sims. I won't repeat them, but unfortunately that's where it's at. But hey, like I said, it depends on how you want to take this one. Either you can look at this and keep it spin it as a positive, kind of looking at this and saying, hey, this was a little bit better of a performance than I expected from a number of different players and a number of different aspects. Again, the Bengals' kind of reputation was dragged through the mud this week by a pretty scathing report about the coaching staff and some disconnect with them and players. I think everybody by now knows what report I'm referring to. And, so the fact that they came out and nearly pulled off a win, I guess you got to kind of be pleased about that one. But again, it's just 17 points and another loss, another 1 possession loss under Zach Taylor. And it gets tough to watch. It definitely gets tough to watch. And that's kind of the bottom line here. And I think he's 422-1 as the Bengals head coach right now in almost 2 seasons of football. Not very good. Another good question here from Jurgen before we get on out of here. Do we need new scouts? I don't think you need new scouts. I think you need more. Positive. Come on, Anthony, get real. I know, Paul, you hate that I even say anything positive. I understand, buddy. I think the Bengals need more scouts and more effective scouts. And I think they need to put less of that on the coaching staff. The coaches need to be intimately involved in the draft process and the scouting process, but they need to have a more robust scouting department. I've not been shy about saying that at all. I think the Bengals need to there are two areas the Bengals need to address, in my opinion. If they're not going to make coaching changes and or be really proactive in free agency again, or whatever the plan is for next offseason, I think they really need to look at two things. So number one is that scouting department / GM, that whole operation and how they do things, because there are way too many high misses in the draft. There are way too many day one, day two misses in recent years. There are a lot of hits, but there are a lot of misses. And, some of these picks from 2017, 2018, et cetera, they've really set this team back. And even 2015, that draft class as well, they've really set this team back a lot. So that's one area. And then I think they also need to address and I don't know exactly how you would do this, but the amount of injuries and the severity of them to important players really since 2018 is staggering. Andy Dalton missed the rest of 2018. You had Burrow get injured this year. Dalton was injured in 15. I mean, you have to do something with this medical staff, the training staff. I don't know what you have to do, but you have to invest heavily into injury prevention. And again, I don't exactly know. That's kind of a nebulous thing, but you got to figure out something to not lose so many players, important players throughout the course of the season. Injuries happen everywhere. Injuries happen to every team, but that's just kind of the reality of it. So I don't know. I don't know what. Again, I don't have a specific way you address that, but you gotta find a way to invest in a better infrastructure there to try and prevent those, because it is absolutely crippling to the team. The Joe Burrow thing and that hit, that's something different. But there are just a lot of hamstring tweaks, foot tweaks, ankles, groins, all these things. And you can attribute it to the conditioning issue from not having a preseason and all that kind of stuff, but you can't keep losing so many important players. Can't keep losing so many important players to injury. And it seems to happen to the Bengals more than many other teams in the league. But that's going to do it, I think, folks. We went through a lot here, and at least it was a little bit more enjoyable of a game in some respects than we thought. I think it's also it wasn't an enjoyable game in a lot of respects to watch either, but is what it is, and we've got a few more to go before the conclusion of the season here, and we really got to hope for progress. We really got to hope for some positive signs, and we really got to hope that things start to move in the right direction. Otherwise, many of you already have them out, but the pitchforks and torches will be coming out if no improvements are made, and if it doesn't seem like a lot of changes will be made. We'll see what happens. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider. Join us Monday for the News Jump. Join us Wednesday for our weekly show, and throughout the week on CincyJungle.com for all your news, opinions, analysis, etc. Have a good one.